Welcome everyone to another Film Roundtable. My name is Matthew Woolf and I'm very excited to introduce our two panelists today. But before I introduce them and get started on the conversation, I want to lead us through a moment of silence to honor all the 2,899,782 reported worldwide COVID deaths as of today. And we're recording this roundtable on April the 8th, 2021. We'd also like to honor all of our Black and Brown brothers and sisters, as well as our First Nation brothers and sisters, whose lives have been taken by the hands of police brutality and other senseless acts of violence. So we can take a moment of silence, that'd be great. Okay, thank you for that. We've been holding these moments of silence since our first roundtable, and we feel that it's important to hold this awareness, as we're still in the midst of a pandemic, and even though the vaccines are starting to, thankfully, to be rolled out in many countries, there's still many countries and many people around the world that won't have the vaccines available to them, and so we want to acknowledge the importance of being safe and empathetic towards one another. That being said, we're very excited. We've been very excited about this roundtable for a long time. It's taken a while to put together, but I'm super excited that it finally worked out. So I'd love to introduce you to Mark Ruffalo and Derek Cianfrance. And welcome, guys. I want to thank you both, so much for joining us at the Film Roundtable and taking the time to share some of your experiences. But before we start, I'd like to remind all of our listeners to subscribe to our podcast, our YouTube channel, follow us on Instagram, and subscribe on our website to be added to our mailing list to get updates about future roundtables. So with that being said, I want to start by saying congratulations to both of you on the masterpiece. That is, I Know This Much Is True. It was a masterclass performance from both of you on so many levels, and I felt lucky that I was there for some of it and a part of it, to witness the magic unfold. Mark, congratulations on the extremely well-deserved Golden Globe, Emmy, ARP, and Screen Actors Guild wins for your portrayal of Dominic and Thomas.
Thanks.
So well-deserved. And Derek, you should have won multiple awards for Best Director too. I did vote for you. But,
so nice.
So did I.
I didn't vote. Hey, I remember the first time, Matt, you showed up on set, because we had a lot of different operators coming in all the time. So and I met you, I think, briefly, but I remember we were shooting a lot of 2-camera setups at the time because there was so much dialogue and so much about performance, and we would just try to cross cover, these great performances that were happening before our eyes. And you were on, I always have 2 monitors. I'm right next to the camera, right close to the actors. And I have the A camera and B camera. And I was noticing how dominant the B camera was looking today on that first day you were there. And I remember asking Jody, our DP, I was like, who's on B? Who's B camera? And clearly, once I met you and got to know you, clearly you were so overqualified for the job. But I don't know, maybe it's a secret, but I started calling you Beef, because
that's what it was.
You were the B camera, but you were Beef, and I was just like, where's Beef? Because you were bringing it every day. So, and I remember we just didn't want to let you came for like a day or something, and then we just didn't want to let you go.
No.
Yeah, you added so much to the film. You had such.
That's what he calls you, Matt. He still calls you Beef. He's like, we're doing this film roundtable with Beef.
I'd forgotten that nickname. That's funny.
How do you feel about it? I mean, it was.
It's so funny. I think somebody asked me how I felt about that. I think as long as I don't mind it actually. I like nicknames. I've been, a lot of people call me Wolfie from my last name. I worked on it many years ago. I worked on a show called Growing Up Gotti. It was a reality show when I first came to the States, and the Gottis thought I looked like gosh, something about Mary. The guy,
Chris, I know who you're talking about. Yeah, you do kind of look like him.
The guy who was on Letterman all the time, Chris.
What's that?
The guy who was on Letterman all the time. Yeah.
He was in Schitt's Creek too.
Yeah. Yes, he was. That's him. And I can't remember his character's name. Woogie. It was Woogie. And all the time, like they'd be, talk to me like, what was her name? Gotti's daughter. I can't think of her name now. I can't believe it. She used to tell me, "Hey, Woogie, get over here. I got to, do I look good today?" And I was like, yeah, you look great. I was like, who is this Woogie guy? I had no idea who he was. Anyhow, so to be honest with you, I wasn't overly excited by Woogie, but Beef kind of, comes up many like, I'm strong, I taste good, like you want me around. So no, I was very happy to have that. It was a new nickname. And,
substantial. You're substantial, man. You brought a meal.
It was that first day was amazing actually, because I didn't know what I was walking into. I didn't know I was walking into a set that was shooting film, and which I'll ask you guys about later. But it was it was intense. I think the scene was at Hollyhock at the house. Dom, Mark, you and your and John were playing a scene that you guys were. I think he was drunk, and it was kind of pretty intense scene, and came right into the thick of things, and there was kind of like a big demand of attention in a very unusual way, because it was intense, and I was like straight into it, and I immediately felt like I knew that I was in something special. So I didn't know, of course, like you said, I didn't know that I was going to be there as long as I was, but I'm very grateful that I was. But enough about me for now.
I like
I've
that
heard
part.
You like that part?
Yeah, I like that part. I like talking about you.
Well, we can talk about me later if you like, but let's talk about you. People are not going to tune in to listen to my story. They want to listen to your story.
It's our story. You were there.
That's true. That's true. It was, it's a pretty special story. I mean, it was a special story. It was clear for all the production to see, how much the project meant to both of you. Not having worked with either one of you before, I've got no reference point from other productions. I can say that it was clear that you were both pouring your heart and souls into the production, with such a clearly what must have been a huge budget show. You guys both managed to make it feel personable on set, so much so that there was a sense of camaraderie and collaboration across every level. Everyone felt invested in the show. I wanted to ask you about that, but before I do, I want to show you a picture, share a picture that, and see if it jogs a memory. Let's see if I can do this real quick.
Day two.
So
Derek has this uncanny ability. He remembers every single day and what we shot on that day. It's unbelievable. I mean, how many days did we shoot, Derek?
116.
And he can tell you what we shot on day 112.
It's getting a little blurry over time, but I definitely remember this day too. Because you can see
Jody gave me this picture.
Huh?
Jody gave me this picture, and he said, I think this was like day 2 or day 3, and this sums up the experience of working with these guys. The intimacy, the camaraderie, the fun, the joy, the passion, that they brought to this project, and that everyone felt across the board, you know, is summed up by this photo. You know, the three of us in the front seat of of this car. And so I'm keen to hear, you know, what made it so special for both of you, you know, and why, you know, yeah, what made it so special. Let's start with you, Mark.
I love that picture so much.
Me too.
I miss that. I really miss that. This year has been horrible.
Yeah.
We Derek, what made it like that?
I mean, I look at that picture and I think about just, the thing that always comes to mind with I Know This Much Is True is it felt like we were on vacation together. And I feel like we had spent so many years talking about it and, you know, struggling to get there. And every film that I've ever made has this, a bit of a sense of this to it, that all the work happens before you get to set. But then once you get on set, that's the life. That's when life starts. That's when I feel like I look at me and Mark in that picture and I just see the joy that we had every day working, no matter how grueling or intense or vulnerable or how much pressure we had on us or the intensity of the scenes. It was always, it felt like being on vacation and like actually being truly so present and alive and just thankful. I mean, I look at my whole life as a filmmaker, and 116 days is a lot of days, but over the course of 5 years, 116 days isn't that big of a percentage. You know, if I go back to like look at Blue Valentine, that was like 12 years and I got 23 days to shoot it in, and that's an even smaller percentage. So I think the time that we're able to actually be in that moment and be alive, and I feel more alive in those moments than I do in any other time in my life. I mean, except maybe like the birth of my kids. That it's really precious time, you know. And you look back on it now 2 years later. I mean, that we shot that on April 10th 2019 was the day. So almost 2 years to the day that picture was taken. And yes, we're in a totally different world, pandemic or not. I would still look back at that moment and think like none of those moments are guaranteed. You know, you never know when you're going to be on making your next film. You never know when you're going to be working with people, you know, that you love. And yeah, it's a blessing. That picture symbolizes just a true blessing.
That's awesome. Really, really beautifully summed up.
Yeah.
Exactly. So just the height of, you know, all of the work and all of the years and all of the experience at an age where like we really know who we are and kind of what we're doing and have an enormous amount of freedom within the structure of our craft of this work. And you know, we just know that world and we know where we're going, and we delight in the danger, and we delight in the speed of it and the messiness and the delight, the magic. I mean, every day we were really chasing magic, and we were good at it. You know, we knew how to chase magic, and so we have big smiles on our face because you're in the mystery. You know, you're right in the middle of what we're all hunting, what we're all looking for in one form or another, which is to touch the mystery, to be part of the mystery, to be alive in it, to be swimming in that river. So yeah, it was like that for all of it. It was a really special experience.
Yeah, it was. I think about it though too, Mark, like day 2. So like you and I just started working together at that moment. But we had been working together for, like I said, 5 years, talking about it, or like meeting at breakfasts or like having meetings, but
or working, like literally working on the script, working on,
yeah.
you know, even the work we did in prep, all
But
that.
you never
prep.
know until that camera comes, if the magic, if you have the magic, and how far do you have to push to get the magic, or do you have to manufacture it the whole time? And I think on that day too, I was feeling like it's here.
Yeah.
It's
Which is
just
rare.
here.
Yeah.
It's just here. We just gotta not like do too much to get in its way.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean that's funny because I didn't know it took that long to kind of from the process. When you say 5 years, do you say 5 years from when you guys started collaborating on it? Because Mark, you had the project first, is that right? I mean, how did it come about exactly?
I read it. I met with Wally Lamb. It had come on the market. I mean, it'd come on the market. It'd been in turnaround for like 16 years. Probably, I think there was something like 27 drafts of the thing in Fox as a film, and they couldn't crack it. And you know, it was funny because everyone was chasing this material, and Wally reached out to my agents and, you know, said, would Mark be interested? His agent reached out to my agents and said, would Mark be interested in this? And I hadn't read it, but everyone that I loved had read it and loved it. And so I literally had a weekend. You know, they were like, we can't wait, you know, it's moving quickly. There's so many people that want this. And I said, well, give me the weekend. And I read 900 pages, you know, in 3 days, which is crazy for me, being dyslexic. And but I couldn't put it down, and I loved it, and I knew what to do with it, and I knew how to play it, and, you know, I could see it. And so I met with Wally and I said, listen, I don't have the money that these people that are chasing this do, but I feel like I can get this. I know I could get this made, and I will make it a priority to get it made quickly, so you don't have to wait another 16 years. And if I can't move this give me a year. If I can't move this in a year, I'll give it back to you. We'll shake hands and we'll move on. You know, you could. I don't want to keep you hanging on. I know that you've been waiting to get this made. If I can't do it, I'll give it right back to you. And he said, okay, let's do that. And we shook hands at the breakfast table. And he said, who are you thinking of to direct it? And I said, Derek Cianfrance. And he said, I like that idea. I love that idea. And I said, well, we're friendly, and I've wanted to work with him for years, and I think he wants to work with me, and I'm gonna reach out to him. And so I reached out to Derek, and poor Derek was like, man, this isn't my thing. Really. I don't know about doing a book. I like to write, you know. And I said, well, let's just, I think Derek, I was like, let's go for a walk. Let's just walk and talk. Mm-hmm. And we walked into Central Park. I think we walked for like 3 hours. We walked, you know, we talked about life and our families and filmmaking, and a little bit about this here and there and how we would do it. And slowly but surely, I saw him start to be like, how would we do the twin stuff? And I was like, oh man, you know, we could do that. I've been doing it, you know, and we could do it as real. I mean, it'll feel, we can make it, we can make this work. The technology is there. And he's like, oh yeah, I don't like those technology movies. And I was like, yeah, I know, but we'll integrate that. We won't even know that is happening.
Not that I don't like those technology movies. I just don't like
the technology.
Me doing those technology movies.
Yes.
Now, at this point in my life, I love those technology movies, but I'm not the guy for that right now.
Yeah.
I'm not the person.
That's what he was expressing to me. Not that he didn't like technology movies, but he didn't feel comfortable working in that tech.
Yes.
Right? Is that right?
I didn't want green screens.
Yeah.
I didn't want the tail. I didn't want the machine to be bigger than what was happening in front of the camera. That's always my nightmare as a filmmaker, is that because I've seen that happen so many times. When I was struggling to make films, I would walk by sets in New York City. I remember I walked by a set in New York City one time, and it was in the middle of December, and there was 2 actors in the middle of the street over in Chinatown, and they were kind of cold, and they were trying to warm each other up, and I kept walking like this, and as I walked, I was like tracking along, and so I walked past them, actors first, passed by the actors, and then I passed by the camera. A little while later, the camera pointing at the actors. And then I followed this camera that had these long cord cables running from the camera. And those cables tracked for like a block and a half. And they eventually found themselves inside of a tent. And in this tent was all these monitors. And in that tent it was filled with people, and there was heat lamps, and they were all eating hors d'oeuvres and little like crackers with prosciutto on them and cheese. And they were sipping hot cocoa, and they were all looking at this bank of monitors, this cast of judges watching the actors freeze their ass off in front of the camera and judging what they were doing.
That was me.
Yes, that was you. And I thought to myself, why is everything in here so much bigger than what's going on with those 2 actors? And so I was just like, I want that tent. I don't want that here. If I ever get a chance to make a film, it's going to be that camera and those actors. And that's it. All this other stuff, like I don't want the machine. And of course, the machine is very helpful in some ways, but it can become just excess. And after
He's
a while,
right there. I mean, that you saw it, but Derek is there, laying in the back seat with a clamshell monitor, or he's laying on the seat next to me. He's there. I've never worked with a director who is always there with you, talking to you, right there. And loving you and loving what you're doing, and you feel it's so intimate. You're there, Matt. You saw, and it just is. It's so immediate, and that is the pushing away of the technology, so that he's actually in the mix of that. There's a sacred space there. Whatever space is between the camera and the actors, when that camera's rolling, that is a sacred space. And when the director is inside that space, he's part of that space. And that's rare that a director will bring himself inside that space. It almost never happens. When I directed my movie, that's exactly where I was. And when I went back to that monitor and I saw, the first day there was like 10 producers sitting back by that monitor. And I walked back there and they're all start like, what about this? What about that? What about this? I was like, give me a fucking clamshell. And I went and I literally sat on the dolly, or I sat on, just like Derek. And I directed the whole movie from there. And I never went back to that monitor again, because that is where it's happening, is there. And Derek did that. Derek was there. And so you did it there, D. Whatever whatever promise you made to yourself on that cold night in Chinatown. What, 30 years ago?
Has it been that long? Maybe 22, 23 years. Yeah. But yes, that intimacy, that's it. To say like, I still have, there's always a video village happening on my sets. And in that video village, that is a very sacred place. There's a group of producers that'll be there, but it's not a hangout spot. It's not a place to judge. And I often will, when I feel like I'm stuck or something, or when I feel like we've gotten somewhere and I feel like we're good, I will always go back and confer with the team and just talk to them about what they're seeing, because oftentimes I've had, between Greg Feinberg and Lynette Howell and Ben Browning and Jamie Patrikoff on this, there was and when Wally visited, there was always those voices back there that I was just interested in what they were seeing, and I'm not so precious about like protecting it against, but I don't want all those voices all the time. I don't want those voices to ever come to you, Mark, on set, or any of the other actors. I want you guys to I always want the actors to get lost in the world and not to think about anything that they're doing could be good or bad. I try to go in with zero judgment. And so those producers usually do that too. Then they're not judging, they're just talking about opportunities, what other opportunities in a scene could be. And I've been saved by my producers many times who've said, maybe you want to try, try this. I was watching that scene and that line really stuck out to me. Is there somewhere further you can go with it? Not necessarily being prescriptive, but inspirational. And I feel like that's the energy I'm always looking for on a film set. It's just inspiration. Who's got an idea?
Exactly. I always encourage that from all my crew. Like, always come to me, no matter where you are, what you're doing. If you've got an idea, I want to hear it. And if it's good, I'm going to steal it. No, I mean, if it's good, I'm going to say, this was the key grip, or this was the grip, or this was, the whatever, the camera system, thought we should try this. I think it's a really good idea. What do you think? Like, if I feel like it's going to make that contribution is going to make the project better, then, you want that. And I think that helps, the inclusivity a little bit, and makes people, like I said at the beginning, like, you guys created this atmosphere on set. And, and I think probably, part of it is because you were sitting right next to the camera. I mean, I've worked on a lot of projects, and I don't think I've ever had a director sit that close to me either. I've been doing this for about 25 years too. I don't know. And, there'd be, that first day, it's a couple of times, and, like, you're like tapping me on the shoulder. I'm like, who's tapping me? And it's you're right there.
Geez, I tell you one thing, the director's chair is that there's no other piece of furniture in the world that I despise more than the chair. And before we were about 2 weeks out of production, and the office was like excited to show me, like, look what we got in. And they had all these director's chairs with everyone's names on the back, embroidered on the back. And I was like, I don't want to see a director's chair on set ever. And the producer's like, that's crazy. People need a place to sit. I was like, I'm never going to sit. I will never sit on set unless I'm on the ground. I was like, or on a chair in the set, but I don't want to sit. I want to be in with I want to be alive, And so they said, well, you need director's chairs because we need a place to sit. And I was like, okay, fine. But you got to take the names off of them. There's no hierarchy of chairs. Like, this is your chair. What is this, grandpa's living room? And like, only grandpa can sit in that chair. I used to hate that. When I'd go over to my grandpa's house, I'd go sit in his chair. That's not, you don't own, I mean, maybe he did own that chair, but on a movie set, you can quickly get it can move so fast into that hierarchy.
I did have an actor say to me, you've put your script is on my chair.
Wow. You were directing?
And there was a row of chairs. There was chairs open all over the place.
This was a British actor, Mark? We're just going to try to piece together the mystery.
I'm not telling you.
Because you had a British accent when you said that.
But not a good one.
You have to
it
watch
wasn't a good impression. I purposely didn't make it a good impression. And I said, and I looked, and there was 6 other chairs all there next to us. And I thought he was joking. And so I was like, oh, okay, well, I sort of laughed, and he's like, your script is in my chair. And I said, okay, sorry. And I picked it up and put it in the chair next to his. But yeah, that's a crazy thing.
Yes, a chair with your name on it.
I know.
Don't ever give me a chair with my name on it, ever.
Note to self: do not buy Derek a chair with his name on it for his birthday.
Yes, thank you.
That's an amazing story. Now you do know that we're not gonna rest till we find out who that was. Now, don't you know? So.
Well, I haven't worked with that many Brits, so it won't be long if you work hard enough.
It wasn't me. It wasn't me saying that you left it on the dolly chair or anything like that, was it?
No, it wasn't. Definitely not you. No.
So I'm interested to know. I mean, obviously, this is such a complex show and such a deep show on so many levels. I mean, you both tackled many heavy stories. And many different roles, and I'm keen to know how this, or maybe it didn't. I don't know. How did it differ from your past projects? And something that I'm kind of really interested in as well is you guys are both EPs on the show, co-creators. So how did that differ? How did that change your normal approach, like as an actor, as a director, and that relationship with each other? When you're both coming in as creators, I'm fascinated to know about that. Derek, why don't you start?
Mark, you taking this one first, or am I taking this one first?
No, you first, pal.
So I didn't. I mean, quite frankly, we'd never talked about this, Mark, but I was a little uncomfortable about it. I just didn't have any experience with it in that way, like working with someone who was going to be in front of the camera, who was also behind the camera with me. And, because I just didn't know what those rules were, because as the director, I've always found myself to be like the leader, but I try to lead from the back, I try to lead with everyone out in front of me, and guide that way. And it's hard to do then if someone else is leading from the front. Do you know what I mean? It's hard to lead from the back if someone else decides they're going to lead from the front. And then it creates like a weird power struggle and then something. So I just didn't know. And I was a fan of your movies. I had tried to get Mark to be in Blue Valentine at one point, which he never returned my phone call. Then we met.
That's not true. You didn't call me.
I didn't call you, but I sent the script. Let's get this script to that guy, Mark Ruffalo. Did you see You Could Count on Me? He would be great in this movie.
I was shooting 13 going on 30.
Yes, exactly. You're doing 13 going on.
You know what the problem was, Derek? You left it on his chair.
Exactly. Yes. That was the script.
That was the script I had on the chair, which the actor took and threw in the garbage. And that was it. No, yeah.
I mean, and it's all like weird credits, but every time we got together and talked about what we were going to make, it felt like simpatico, it felt like effortless. It felt like we were on the same page, and I would turn in scripts and you would respond to them. And it was always so awesome to talk to you about it, and I just remember that feeling of like our calls about it and taking trips to visit Wally and just being able to talk about it, over and over again about what we could explore in this thing. And we had so many similarities with our Italian American upbringing. So it was like a label, the credit, but it was basically like we were just doing what we were doing, and we just had the responsibility that we pitched it, and we just felt super, super responsible for it, like we would have in any case, So I went into the unknown, and it turned out to be not a thing.
And I think part of your job as a producer is finding the people that you trust and you love and you want to foster. You want to embrace them, and you want to create the most kind of nurturing atmosphere for them to be the best that they can be. it's not very much different than Derek's approach to directing, and so, you know, yeah, I'm an executive producer, and I guess you could say, you know, I had you know, some executive kind of power or whatever, but really for me it was always deferential to Derek and his vision, and wherever I was asked to participate with the scripts, the pitches, casting, those places I participated as a collaborator. And but yeah, it was Derek and I's vision was absolutely in sync from the very beginning, and it was just a partnership, but it was definitely led by Derek, and I was doing anything that I could to make sure that he got whatever he needed, and was backed up, and could make the movie that he and I had set out to make.
Yeah. I do remember that early on in our executive producer world, and I don't want to get into any specifics, but we did have an argument. We did have a difference of opinion about something. And I remember at the time when it was happening that I felt like this is a good thing, because what we're going to learn from this, Mark and I, if we can survive this, if we can't survive this, there's no way we're going to survive 116 days together. But if we can survive this, and we probably will, we're going to have that muscle memory for when we're on set together and things go sideways. And we're going to know, we're going to have that history together that we butted heads and didn't get along and felt like, you know, who's gonna, like, I don't know, whatever those, we saw that each other's ugliness, probably you more than me. I mean, you saw mine more than I saw yours, but we went out and knew that we could get through anything together, and that no matter what. So I thought it was a blessing for that to happen.
Oh yeah, and I wasn't. I mean, as tough as it was, that wasn't anything. That wasn't like when I came, you know, when I got poison ivy and I had to come to set on steroids. Yes. And I lost my mind. and that fight, that was a real fight. I mean, that was scary. What?
Let's talk about that.
Yeah, Matt, do you want to talk about that?
No, I want. Yeah, I want to hear that story. I don't know if I was there that day. I'm not. I mean, I definitely don't remember any fights.
What, Mark? What? Do you remember?
Yeah. I was such a brat. Well, we were. It's the scene at Hatch where Thomas is going in, and it's literally a, what is that, a 12-page scene. I mean, and we were shooting it. The design of it was that we were going to shoot it in a single, like you know, handheld single, the whole thing, like a one-act play. Like we were doing much of it, but this had many characters, and it had you know, lots of moving pieces, and a rehearsal was called literally like the night before, and I had already had like 12 pages of dialogue to learn for that day's work, and I was on steroids because I got covered with poison ivy. So I wasn't
for doing the scene. You were for doing the dream sequence where you have to wake up in a field in your underwear.
Yes, that's right. And I got poison ivy all over my body.
And you weren't happy with me for the underwear thing either. I remember it was cool in the script, but when we got on set, you were like, "Do I really have to do this?" And I was like, "What does it say in this? What does it say here?"
Yes, you were. Bastard. And yeah, so I was not happy with Derek, and I came in and I was like, I was in such a bad mood, and I was on steroids, which make me insane. And I had roid rage, and but Derek was also like not in his best either that day,
because we were also surrounded by real like how many, like 12 different guys, 12 different men, all playing like security guards, all methoding their own roid rage issues, right?
Yes.
And it was a little bit of like, who's the alpha
Yes.
in the room, right?
Yes.
Everyone, it was the pack. We were
Yes.
trying, and everyone was trying to see who's the alpha.
And it got kind of ugly for a minute there.
But which is what the scene needed to be too.
Yes,
So,
it did.
so I was, yes, you and I didn't really get along on that day, but it was also the moment that we needed to get. And the only reason we did the rehearsal was because it was such a technically challenging scene, and so thankful that we did. But the thing is, you, if I can remember, you were mad at me because you couldn't remember your lines, and you were mad at me that I was putting you in that position around all these other actors to not be able to remember your lines. And I kept on saying, don't worry about it, it's a rehearsal, you don't need to know your lines. But you didn't want to let those guys down. So you always have it's always a little bit of honor with you, Mark. You know, you're an honorable person. You didn't want to do that to the other actors.
You are too. Yeah, I did. I felt like I was letting them down, and you know, I'm number one on the call sheet, and I come in for this, you know, rehearsal, and I didn't know any of my lines, and you know how I was. I mean, I just wanted to be prepared, and yeah, I was embarrassed, and I hadn't slept, and my balls were itching, and from the poison ivy. I mean, I had poison ivy everywhere. It was awful. And yeah, and I kind of like, yeah, kind of lost it that day. But it was Dominic. It was
Dominic trying to control the thing. Yeah.
Yep. Wanting to control, wanting to handle it and manhandle it and dominate it, and I couldn't. And it was exactly, it ended up being exactly what the nature of that scene was for Dominic, and he loses it. Yeah. Just like I did. I remember you came to my trailer afterwards. I just burst into tears. I was like, I'm so sorry. You're like, I'm sorry too. But yeah, that was one of those moments.
You know, I think I was there that day, come to think of it, and we were outside because it was a single camera, and we were outside for hours because I guess it took so long, and I didn't know what was going on inside.
Yeah, we were waiting for Mark to get his lines.
But that's beautiful. That's a beautiful moment, though, right? I mean, that you can help the scene. That's why specifically you actually put the poison ivy in there on purpose, right, Derek?
Right. No, I don't. The thing is, the point is, like, I don't care about the lines most of the time anyway. So I was like, dude, it's not a big deal. We're just trying to get the beats here. We're not shooting it for real. Don't worry about it. We don't need. I don't. Even on the day, I don't care if you say the lines or not. But yeah, then that made you even more mad at me.
There's nothing you could have said to me that wouldn't have made me mad that day, D. I was just in that place.
Yeah. We all get there.
I love
so actually, I mean, oh, that's nice. I didn't want to interrupt that. I stepped on that line. Sorry, guys. Say it again, Mark.
That I love you, man.
Love you too.
You know, I was going to ask you about what the challenges that you guys faced, and clearly that was one of them. You know, I'm interested to know about the choice of shooting on film, and you know, and whether that was a challenge, and how that came across to you both, and you know how that decision was, because you know we live in a world today. It's mostly digital, even though film is making a resurgence, especially with the younger generation, which is great. We actually, you know, as a group, we did our part to try and save the film program at a highly respected school. That we're thinking about cutting the film program within, you know, literally learning, shooting, and loading film, and we thought that would be a travesty. You know, you can't do that. So, you know, we put a letter together, and we contacted many members of the ASC and various people, and so. Yeah, you know, and especially a heavily effects show as this was, you know, I'd love to hear about that conversation, how that went down, and from both of you.
Mark, are you on first here?
No, you got to take this one, because part of the fight we had that day, you you were saying something like, I was like, this would be better on digital today, and you're like, digital sucks. And I knew I was gonna wind you up with that. I was like, too bad we're not shooting digital today, D.
Well, let's go back at that. See, I don't have a hatred for digital. I love digital, but I think that the film or the story that you're telling has to be told in the right medium, right? Yeah. And so this movie took place in the 90s and the 80s, 70s, 60s, 50s, 40s, 30s, 20s, 10s. And there was, if you're going to shoot on a digital format, it would have to be some sort of SD format, right? 4K, HD, whatever, didn't exist back then. And so I feel like the world, it doesn't look like the world to me. It doesn't look like what my memories of that time are. It's too, and so, I've shot in plenty of things digitally over the years, but it also has to inform process, because I'm so consumed with also process. And my wife actually like taught me this really important lesson about film and time, and how film and time are joined and linked. She used to make all these short Super 8 silent comedies where she would point the Super 8 camera at herself and hit, press the trigger and then go run in front of it and perform. And she said, a Super 8 cartridge at 18 frames a second is like 2 minutes and 42 seconds. And so she used to tell me that she understood exactly what 2 minutes and 42 seconds was, because she just felt it, because she had shot so many, she just got used to the time of the clock of the reel of film. And so I think with film, beyond the aesthetic implications of film, beyond the textural implications of film, I prefer film for what it can do to actors, because I feel like it can set up like a shot clock, and I feel like actors are like athletes. And so I think if Mark is like a basketball player, okay, there's 10 minutes on the clock. And in that 10 minutes, you got to score some points, Mark. I can be the coach on the sideline, give you all the plays I want, but at the end of the day, I got to trust in you to get those points on the board. Now, if you could continue shooting and shooting and shooting and shooting, it just takes out that urgency. And so I think film is like a shot clock. To use another metaphor, I'd say film is like a stick of dynamite. So like you can start shooting and you light the dynamite, and you only have this much time until it's over. And so it creates this feeling of like, we have to get it. It creates an urgency. Now that can also backfire a little bit, like it did on the first day of our shoot. On the first day of our shoot, we had this great ambition that we were going to shoot this 22-page scene with Mark in Dr. Patel's office, seeing his therapist. And it was 22 pages on the page. And most of it was based on Wally Lamb's great writing. And I was just like, I was kind of like in a place with like film, like I had to cut up my last film. I had to cut up the third act of my last film so fast. And I just like was only servicing plot. So when I had a chance to do this for HBO, I thought, I'm going to only service character, and I'm going to do things that I could never do in a film. And so I'm going to shoot a 20-minute dialogue scene, because I would never have the luxury or the real estate in a 2-hour movie to be able to afford 20 minutes of a talking scene. So I'm going to do it here. So I went over the top with writing it. And so that was what we decided to shoot on our first day, to just set the bar. It's like, it was the idea of like, how do you go swimming in a swimming pool? Do you like tiptoe in? You start in the shallow end and slowly go in, or do you just go on the high dive and just cannonball? And so I felt like we should just cannonball into the deep end right away. And so how we had it set up is we had our 2-perf 35 millimeter camera, and we had a 1,000-foot roll on it, which lasts about 22 minutes. Now it's a 22-page scene. So if it's a page a minute, we're cutting it really close. Now, Mark didn't always agree with the idea of shooting on film. he thought that it was better for him as an actor to shoot digital. And I was like, I have this concept about sports and athletics and the shot clock, and here's my shot clock metaphor, Mark, and it's like a stick of dynamite. And every time I would try to sell him on this stuff, he'd be like, not working for me. You know, it was just like, it was a hit him cold. He's like,
that. I
what
was
kind
like,
of?
D, it still might be better to shoot on digital for us for
Yes.
this.
Yes. So
Plus, there was a budgetary issue as well that we were dealing with at some point before we decided to go to 2perf. I mean, wasn't moving to 2perf a way that we could have our film budget, or no? Was it always 2perf?
I always wanted to shoot 2perf because that's my preferred format for 35 millimeter or for any kind of film, because it's what Sergio Leone would basically shoot, you know.
Buddy, I shot Sympathy for Delicious on 2perf.
Exactly. So I was like, dude, why do you got against me shooting film for this? Anyway.
No. I'll tell you what it was, and this is what I said. It was time. It was the time that it took, knowing that we were going to be, putting, making sausage and stuffing it. I felt that the time that it took to load a camera and to clack.
Done.
I know. I was wrong. I fully admit.
No, but let's talk about where I was. So let's get to this first day.
Okay.
The first shot, I have the camera in the room. Mark has never seen Dr. Patel's office. Dr. Patel has seen it. She's lived in it. But Mark, it's his first day in there. The camera's inside the room. We start rolling. I never really call action. We start rolling, and I can hear them walking up the steps, and I hear her key go into the door, and the door opens, and here comes Mark looking around the room. The camera is watching him for the first time. He comes in, tries to find a place to sit. He ends up eventually sitting close to the camera, which is good. That's where we kind of wanted him. And we start going through the scene, and the scene it's okay. I mean, it's not bad. If we had to stop there, we'd be okay, it'd be okay. And it took a little while to get going on the scene. And about 2/3 of the way through the scene, Mark started really hitting his stride, and he started just getting into the pocket, right? And I was like, I was just like coming alive watching the monitor, and I started to look down at the monitor, and I noticed that the footage counter was at like 920, and I'm like 920 feet, and I'm thinking to myself, oh fuck, we still got like 7 pages of this scene left. And so I'm watching this footage counter, and Mark is on fire, giving probably the best performance he gave in the whole show, like right out of the bat. Like he comes in, and then pretty soon I see we're at 991, 992. And I'm like, there's no way we're going to fucking roll out. We're going to roll out. And pretty soon the camera, I hear it roll out. And the Jody, who was shooting it at the time, looked over at me, and I was just like, I held him. And I just said, don't take your eye off the lens, right? And so I just kept looking at the monitor. I kept my focus like this, like it was still happening, knowing there was no film in the camera. And Mark finished. He went for it for the next 5 minutes and committed. And I thought to myself, Mark, this is when he's going to tell me he was right. And see, I should have shot digital. But anyway, we finished. And I told Mark, we didn't get it all. We ran out of film. You're going to have to speed it up a little bit. Why are you taking so much time at the beginning here? What's your perspective on that story, Mark?
I knew the camera rolled up.
You heard it.
Yeah.
What did you feel? What an idiot?
No. At that point, I was totally. That was it. We were in. There was no way.
That's how I felt too.
Yeah, and that's why I finished the scene. You know why I finished the scene? Because we didn't say cut or we didn't say action, and it was no matter what to the bitter end, and that was it. I was like, I'm finishing the scene like it is, and until Derek says, Hey, stop. We rolled out, whatever. Fuck it. I'm going right to the end. I'm riding this train to the end. And I knew it rolled out. I heard it roll out. You know, of course I did. I've been on.
Not your first rodeo.
Yeah, yes.
That's
Amazing.
beautiful. Yes, that's fucking great. Nice job.
That's
when
amazing.
I was shooting when I was trying to make Blue Valentine for all these years, it was kept coming together and falling apart and coming together. And I was Damo, you know, our sound. I was interviewing him for a job. He's like, "What's happening with the movie? I hear it's not happening. I hear the money's not there." I was like, "By April 6th, we'll be shooting that film, whether or not we have film or not. If we don't have film in the camera, we're going to do the scenes without film." And it's true. Like, you know.
Love that.
But can I just say something about film on this movie? We shot, what was it, 600 hours of 2 perf 35. It was like 1.8 million feet of film. And that was
Love you.
our whole motto was like, let's keep Kodak in business.
Actually, I didn't want to interrupt the story, but just to clear it up for anyone who's watching, a regular 4-perf 1,000-foot mag is about 11 minutes. You got 22 minutes because you were shooting 2-perf, I believe. So
no.
Right?
It was 1,000-foot 2-perf, yeah.
Yeah, so that's why you're getting 22
Yeah,
minutes, because some people might
coming.
go, well, yeah. But that's cool. See, I mean, that's amazing right there. You know, your challenges, how you got over it, and the pure professionalism. You as an actor, Mark, you're not going until you hear cut, and Derek, you as a director, you're not going to break the flow of your lead actor. It's like you're both in it to win it, right there. Even though you both know exactly what's going on. It's like
we never did cover. We never punched in. Whenever we shot the whole scene every single time. There was no, okay, let's punch in for this line, or you know, my next job, I went to work on a show, on a movie, and we would shoot the first 2 pages and be like, okay, let's we got that. Let's start cutting the next 2 pages of a 6-page scene. Or, okay, we're just going to go in for this line now. And you're sitting there doing a series of the line, completely disjointed, completely divorced from the rest of the scene and whatever you were building or working on in the rest of the scene. And yeah, we every time we changed the camera angle, put a different lens on, we started at page 1 and did the entire scene.
And oftentimes before the scene started, and we kept rolling until after the scene was over. And that's where you find a lot of gold too.
Lots of gold. That's magical.
Yeah.
I love it. I actually, and I wanted to ask you about that, Derek, a little bit, because you know, you heavily use zooming as part of the storytelling
On this
process.
one,
yeah. Yeah, I mean, and you know, you don't see that very often these days. And I never spoke to you about it, and I wanted to know what came, how did you arrive at that? You know, because that's an exact reason. Like, you didn't need to do a close up because, you know, you were zooming into a close up half the time, and you know, from just before you go in, just like from my perspective, when I would come on, you know, after a while, when you grew the trust, you know, it was up to me and the other guys to kind of zoom in when we felt it was the right time. Mm-hmm. And that was amazing, you know, because again, it's like, you know, I think so many people show up just to, you know, to shoot, you know, on anything, to shoot, you know, so they think about lighting, they think about framing, they don't think about story. There's not enough people think about the story. And what, you know, ultimately the story is what drives everything, always. And, you know, if you can't tell that story, if you can't be involved in that story, then, you know, what are you doing there? And, you know, to give us the reins like that was amazing and really special. So, you know, thank you for that.
Well, I wanted the motto from the day one was that this movie would be told with actors, right? This story would be told by actors, not about what we can do behind the camera, not about our tricks, not about the twinning tricks that we can do and all the, motion control that we can do, but it's about the actors. So whatever, they're our primary concern, right? They are going to be telling the story for us. So as photographers then and operators or DPs or whatever, we all have to be watching the actors and engaging with them at all times. And so it forces the operators and the camera to really be in with them. There's an old saying of like fly on the wall that you hear people say, and I hate that term with a passion, because flies are nuisances. And flies on the wall, like if you have a fly in the room, you want to get rid of it. And I never want the actors to feel like the camera is a fly. I want the actors to feel like the camera is their soulmate, is their best friend, and so what you end up having to do as an operator is mind meld, soul meld with those actors. And I think the zoom came from that. Zoom, I had initially not wanted to zoom in this film. I had originally thought I was just going to do a straight 50mm lens the whole time, not do any kind of, shoot the whole show with one lens basically. But Jody was very adamant about the zooms, and Jody has used zooms in such a beautiful way in his work. And I thought that, I didn't want to do any, I knew I didn't want to do any dolly motion in the movie. I didn't want to have any, it was only going to be pans and tilts. That was going to be the rule, or handheld, but no dolly track set up. Again, it was too much machinery. And I always feel like a dolly move is visceral, but a zoom is cerebral. A zoom is like pulls you into a trance. And I thought that these characters were living such visceral, vulnerable, physical lives that zoom could counteract with that a little bit and offer a little perspective, a little cerebral activity to these people who were trapped in their physical hell, basically. Yeah.
Very cool. Very cool. There's a lot of gold in there. Hopefully everyone's writing that down. Stealing Derek's ideas right now. You brought up twinning, and I'm sure there's people out there who've watched the show and marveled at how well it cut together and how believable it was that Mark, that Dominic and Thomas were two different people. I think if you'd have come out after the show and said that you've been hiding a secret twin brother, your entire life, who was an incredible actor like yourself, and you brought him out, you've been saving him for this role, I think people would believe you. I think people would have believed you because they were so well acted and so believable, and directed, and the visual effects. I mean, Eric Pasquarelli and his team did an incredible job of putting it together. And I was there for setting up some of those twinning shots, and it was pretty intensive. How did that process affect both of you? With your approach to the show, because it's got to be. We'll start with that. The technical side of twinning. How did it affect you as a performance as an actor, knowing that you'd have to kind of literally match those footsteps and those movements of the first go around, and you as a director, there like the restrictions that you'd have to kind of face. So,
well, early on, when Derek and I were talking about how we would do this, he said, I really think it's important that you have a really good actor to play against. That was scary to me because, well, first of all, doing the twins, at some point I was like, what am I doing? This is so crazy. And now that this is happening, I don't know that this could be so hokey. I mean, it could just be, and I'm playing, you know, a mentally ill character, and I went down the wrong path with that. We could talk, you know, Derek could tell you about that at some point, but he said, let's get a really great actor who will totally commit to these two parts the way you are. Because I really think it's important that you have an actor that you're playing off of. And I was nervous about that because I was like, well, how are they going to know how to, you know, if I'm reacting to him and I do something different, you know, 6 weeks or, you know, 6 months later, you know, how are you going to put the two performances together? I mean, will I be directing him while I'm acting with him? I mean, because he's playing both, you know, the character that I'm playing, and I got kind of like crazy about it. And he's like, it doesn't really matter what he does, just as long as there's reactions there. And even for Thomas, even if he's reacting to things that are different on the day than you did as Dominic, it still works. And so he said, there's this guy, I want you to meet him, Gabe Fazio. He's a friend of mine. He's a great actor. And we went to lunch, and he's a doll of a guy. And but we didn't look anything alike, really. And we were even different heights. And I was like, D, I don't know that you're going to be able to do an over the shoulder and catch a piece of his face and have that work. And he said, well, we'll build a mask for him. You know, we'll make him look like you. And, you know, eventually we just scrapped the idea of doing over the shoulders. We really didn't have to do, I mean, Derek designed it, so we didn't have to do that, but it was the best decision. He was such a fantastic actor, and he committed so deeply to these two roles, like a performance of a lifetime for both of them, for him, you know. And it was invaluable because there's just nothing like it. And normally what would have happened is there might have been a stand-in that was reading the lines off screen, or I'm looking at a tennis ball and the script supervisor's doing it. I mean, I've done movies where literally I'm by myself looking at tape marks for all the other actors in motion capture, like doing a whole scene by myself. Wherever, you know, 6 months after we're done shooting, and they want to reshoot a scene, and so they'll put me in a green screen, and I'm literally acting a whole scene by myself, and it sucks. And it just can never be that alive. It just it happens between two people. You know, great acting happens between two people. It's never just one person's performance, you know. And that's why I owe so much to the cast. Whatever awards I got it's theirs as much as it is mine. But that is my experience, and so for my experience, that was probably the most important thing. And then, you know, it was just, the whole thing was so dangerous. It was so, I never knew what I was doing. You know, I thought I went in kind of, but I never knew what I was doing. Even each day with Dominic, I didn't know what I was doing. And Derek created this, he wanted it to be like that. And so, yeah, that was the experience of the twinning was all about making those two people as alive as possible in their particular moments of time that they were living in, 6 months apart, shooting two different characters, 6 months apart, playing the same scene. It's crazy.
Yeah, I remember that moment of being unsure about what Gabe would do, and if it would be different than what you would do, and you were concerned about committing to something or not. And I remember telling you, like, okay, Dominic has this brother. His brother isn't acting the way he wants him to. So the best thing that can happen is Gabe does it a way you don't think is right.
Yeah.
And let Dominic go ahead, Mark, be frustrated with that, because Dominic is not happy with this either. And in the scene, when the camera is rolling, try to change it. Try to change what he's doing. Change his behavior while we're rolling. And though a lot of that stuff became so powerful, right? But then Gabe started doing things that were like, I mean, Gabe was fucking amazing in this. I mean, talk about, I want to let you go, but talk about, like, when I first had to tell Gabe, I was like, hey, Gabe, I got a role for you. You get to play Mark Ruffalo's brother. And he's schizophrenic. And then you're going to play his other brother too. But here's the deal, is that no one's ever going to see your performance. You're going to do this and you're going to get cut out of the whole thing. And Gabe, a lot of actors or a lot of people would be like, well, that's, that's, what do you mean I'm not going to be seen? But Gabe was like, sign me up. I'm so game. And so Gabe felt every day like he was performing for Mark, for me, and for the rest of the crew. And he was doing, it was like theater to him. And like theater doesn't stay around, right? Theater disappears into the ether. And so that's how Gabe approached it. And it was, I think that choice that Gabe made, that selfless, one of the greatest selfless acts of an actor ever, became everyone's inspiration, because he put on, Mark lost 20 pounds, put on 40 pounds. Gabe put on 40 pounds, lost 40 pounds. Do you know what I mean? Or put on 20 pounds, lost 40 pounds. He did exactly the opposite of what Mark was doing, and fully committed. He did the whole thing. Right? What were you going to say, Mark? I interrupted you.
No, it was amazing. It was such a beautiful act, and it was so committed. And he deserves a lot of credit. He really does.
Can I just say,
there were moments where I was frustrated. I was like, Derek, I'm not going to play the scene like that. What is he doing? And he's like, use that, and that's what we did. And that was I mean, Derek, one of your geniuses, just like, use what's here, use what's happening. Let's just be where we are right now. Use that. That's how Dominic's feeling, and it worked.
Hey, can we talk about the weight gain too? Because I remember there was, we were talking about the two brothers, and one of the reasons we had to separate them in Mark, we shot 16 weeks with Mark as Dominic, and then he took like 6 weeks off. I don't know, 7, whatever. He took no, we shot 70 days with Dominic, and then we took 6 weeks off or something like that to shoot the kids. And because don't forget that this was so complicated, because you had Mark playing twins of himself, but at the same time we had another actor, Phil Ettinger, playing the same characters and twins. And then we had two real twins who were 7, 8 years old, Donnie and Rocco Maishi, who were playing the same characters. So we had like multiple layers of people playing the same characters and twins. And it was like, it was a high wire act that, we had no idea when we were shooting it if it was going to work at all, right? And so anyway, so we shot, Mark had taken a break because he had to transition into Thomas, and part of the things that we agreed on, and one of the reasons we had that break, was because he was going to put on weight to be Thomas, because Thomas would have had weight because of his because of his medication, and because of choice, and I'd always thought that Dominic and Thomas were identical twins. So when they came out of the womb, they looked exactly alike, but they had 40 years of life choice and experience. And so when we saw them in the present day, they should look different, And so Mark had to undergo this transition. I remember Mark would call me almost every day begging, like trying to talk his way out of gaining the weight. and I mean, at one point it sounded like a dream because he had lost so much weight to play Dominic. He was on like a 1,200 calorie a day diet.
Yeah.
And so he was excited to eat donuts and pasta, but like that lost its luster after like 12 hours. Right. And so every day
I got indigestion.
Do you remember?
I got the worst indigestion. I couldn't eat anything I wanted to eat. I could only eat oatmeal at the end. Go ahead, keep going.
And then one of the big, so I could always just tell him it's okay, just whatever, sleep in a chair, you'll be all right. But then one of the biggest things, Mark was hanging out with this very, very famous actor. A lot of people would say, you know, well, whatever, he's a really, really good actor, right?
Yeah.
One of the best actors ever. And the actor was telling Mark, don't do it. Don't do it. Don't, you don't have to gain the weight. It's so bad for you to gain the weight. Don't do it. And so Mark was saying, I talked to so-and-so. You know how good he is. He's saying I shouldn't do it. And I was like, you know why he's saying that, right? He's saying that because he's the greatest actor of all time, and he doesn't want you taking the crown.
He's sabotaging you.
Yes. That's how he's so good. He gets in everyone's minds.
He talks everybody out of gaining the weight.
He wants to be the only one that ever did it.
But he's the first one that will go out and gain the weight.
Anyway.
I did that. You don't want to do that.
Yes.
Not at this age.
Anyway, when Mark eventually showed up as Thomas, you weren't there that day, were you, Matt? I don't think so.
No, I mean, I was there when Mark was Thomas, but I don't think I was there the very first day, no.
I just remember when he walked in, there was just the whole crew was just like kind of stunned and had no idea who he was. Because we were all so used to Mark, Dominic, who was a dominant alpha figure on our set, who would walk in, shake everyone's hand, look everyone in the eyes, talk to everyone. And then all of a sudden this guy, Thomas, came shuffling in one day, and he was like an hour late to set because he was locked in his trailer, scared to come to set. And I had to go in there and talk him off his ledge and escort him into set. And he walked into set and he couldn't make eye contact with anyone. And I remember walking with him onto set and hearing the crew just, catch their breath, because what happened to Mark, And then he sat down in front of the cameras, and the first day we shot with Thomas was September 11th, 2019. And Mark sat at the table. We had the camera set up. We had triangulated the positions of the cameras, and we were ready to go. And Dylan, our AD, he said, let's have a moment of silence for those, for September 11th and those, we lost in the attacks. And so we did. There was a moment of silence, and then all of a sudden we heard this voice saying a prayer for America, and it was Thomas, and it was Mark, and Thomas was born. We all heard Thomas for the first time, and it became so poignant because that was Thomas's mission in the whole film, was to end the war in Iraq, which eventually, put two and two together, leads to September 11th. And it was profound, and
unbelievable
and chilling, a chilling moment. And yeah,
I got to say, actually, I remember one of my memories of Mark, of you, or both of you. I've said that how personable you both are. As intense as the filmmaking process is, that you're so involved, and your head is, one's head is so in and needs to be into the space, and it's hard to kind of want to be interrupted because you don't want to break that whole creative process. But when there was downtime and there was moments where things were being set up and changed, you were both kind of like so personable and talking to people and genuinely like interested in everyone on set and all the crew, you know, just like conversations that quite often you wouldn't see that with an actor of your caliber and a director of your caliber, and, you know, taking the time to talk to people like that. But when you, Mark, when you came back as Thomas, you were so withdrawn into yourself, you know, like, and I remember like at one point trying to approach you, like to just say hi, but like, it's like you didn't know what was going on around you. Like you were like, it was such a different person. I remember thinking, so it's going on, what's happening with Mark? He's had that big change. They're like, well, he's Thomas now. But and I was like,
what an asshole he's
Yeah.
but no, but that's how much you were living the character. I mean, clearly that's what.
No, I was so insecure and raw, and I felt so I mean, the genius of, you know, so Derek did push me to gain the weight, and he did because just having that weight on me changed my whole emotional life as well. You know, it was like I was uncomfortable. I couldn't move the same way. And it informed so much the character, but I was so I felt so vulnerable. I felt so naked. I felt so ashamed of myself in a weird way too. So yeah, yeah, it was strange. I did sort of become that guy, and I didn't realize it. I was just very insecure, and I couldn't make eye contact with anyone because I felt so ashamed. It was interesting, and a lot of it was the weight. A lot of it was the weight, and then you know, Derek. It was crazy that first day. He's like, you know who you remind me of? I said, no. He's like, Daniel Johnston. And I said, I don't know who. He's like, you haven't seen The Devil and Daniel Johnston? And I said, no. He's like, you should watch that. And I went home that night, and I'm in the middle of watching it, and I'm like, this is my guy. And a banner comes up on my phone, on my computer, saying that Daniel Johnston had just died. Well, I was watching it saying, I am playing this guy. It was another crazy moment, you know. That whole day was just marked by so many wild, magical, weird, scary happenstances. The fact that we were shooting 9/11 on that day, and that prayer just spontaneously, you know, coming out of the scene. It was everything that I was proselytizing about, everything the character cared about, you know, that war and the loss and what it does to humanity and the implications that it's had on the world because of it. There was something Thomas, as much as I was afraid and didn't understand Thomas, it was the most satisfying part to play. He was much more satisfying to me than Dominic. It's so strange to say.
Wow.
As little as I had to do, it taught me a lot. Bless you.
Bless you.
Thank you.
That's amazing. I just conscious of the time for both of your time. Want to start wrapping things up. You know, we could go for hours, but there's a couple more questions I just want to ask. Just one thing, I know in the past I've seen other chats that you guys have done. I know you've talked about, you know, how the importance of, you know, cast members and crew members, but and Inbal especially. You know, I just you know, coming from a DP's perspective, you know, I'm interested to know what you think about, you know, Jody, you know, how much Jody brought to the table, you know, and he's such a special, calm, calming presence with such a beautiful eye. You know, he's shot so many great films, and you know, bringing his aesthetic to this. You know, I think, you know, it's a pleasure for me to see him, you know, see another DP in action, especially on a project like this, and you know, the huge undertaking that it was. Just love to hear, you know, your thoughts.
I mean, one of the reasons I asked Jody to do it was because I loved his work first and foremost, but even more than that, it was his energy. It was who he was as a person, and his calmness, because I'm riddled with anxiety and angst, and that's a lot of my fire and my fuel that gets me going. But I need a counterbalance for that sometimes, and Jody served that. You know, that's what he was for me on set. He was the guy who would just be like, okay, now simmer down there, buddy. And he would tell me, let's think this through. And we're, you know, here's how we can do it. Here's your choice. Here's the choices we have. And I think we should do this. And then he added so much. You know, I was so nervous about the twinning. Like I came in with the whole concept that the whole thing was going to be shot counter shot. That, you know, my North Star was heat. You know, De Niro and Pacino sitting at that table together, and they're never on screen together. They're flip sides of a coin. You can't see two sides of a coin at the same time. And that was Michael Mann's genius. And we're going to totally bite that genius on this and just do mark and mark. It's all shot counter shot. And Jody and Eric Pasquarelli at a certain point was like, you know, hey guy, come over here. Let's talk about this. We could do more than what you're saying. We don't have to limit ourselves to just the shot counter shot. No, the shot counter shot's the way to go. He was like, okay, well, let's think about it. And so I was like, okay, what are your thoughts? And so like that scene that Mark and I got in the fight on, you know, that was completely designed by Jody. You know, he had the inspiration to do that as a single take. You know, he was inspired by Son of Saul, and he wanted to make that a single take. And I was like, how can we do it as a single take and get in all this technical bullshit? And, you know, trying to have two Marks in the same scene, it just sounds like a nightmare to me. And Jody's like, I don't think so. I've been talking to Eric Pasquarelli, and here's how we can do it. And so they pitched me how they could do it. And I said, okay, come up with the shot. And I never really have ever told a DP to come up with a shot. I'm always right in there. Like, you know, I kind of know what I want to see. And I was like, show me, okay, come up with it. Thinking in the back of my mind that it was that, you know, there's going to be elements to use from it. But the whole shot was it. You know, he designed the whole shot, and so I just have such a great trust and love for him. And I know, and he pushed me out of my comfort zone, which I appreciated, because I know I was pushing him out of his comfort zone at all times too. And it's just a beautiful, beautiful, you know, story of trust between two people, I think.
That's
Mark,
awesome.
Yeah, I mean, his energy was the perfect sort of foil to my energy and your energy, I would say, because, you know, I'm anxious too, and I'll get, you know, worked up, and yeah, and that flow that we were all in this dance together, the camera department and the acting, and that movement, like you said, Matt, the zooming, we were all kind of an organism that was working together as one, and that took a kind of sensitivity that Jamie, you know, that Jody came with. You know, he has an enormous amount of sensitivity as an artist, and his eye is so sensitive to the emotional story that we're telling. So I was, you know, a lot of it has to do with the kind of space you're creating to be working in, and each person brings their personality to that mix, and they they contribute, whether they are aware of it or not, whether it's demonstrative or not, just their pure vibe of who they are. And so Jody has this just loving, inclusive vibe that allows you to be very naked and vulnerable and honest. And so it was always calm, no matter how crazy things got.
Yes.
And that's really appreciable.
Yes.
Yeah, it's such a good lesson. Such a good lesson for anything, in life, but especially on a film set where things get heated all the time. I'm gonna finish up with this last thought or question. We've all been through a hell of a year, and and it's not over yet. Trying to think about all the people that have suffered and all the suffering out there. And I recently spoke to somebody who's trying to represent the disabled community in the entertainment industry and trying to raise awareness. And I think, and disability comes in all forms, not just physical, but mental. And I think this project, the show that you guys made, obviously is a lot about mental disabilities and mental issues that that many of us go through, and we keep bottled up inside. And it's so important to tell those painful stories as much as it is to tell happy ones, because we spend a lot of our lives in some kind of pain. And I think being able to see something that we can identify with that kind of speaks to us, kind of helps share the burden, share our own pain. And, you guys take on a story like that, such a huge responsibility, was a commitment to both of you. Moving forward with your choice of projects, how do you think, your choices will be informed moving forward?
Well, I'm writing a comedy right now.
I just shot a comedy.
Yes, that's where we are, man.
I didn't, not to undercut the question, but we also need joy, and we need levity, and then we need just pure entertainment too to get us through some of this. And but I do have to say that Derek and I always saw this as a comedy.
We pitched it to HBO as a comedy.
We pitched it to HBO. We pitched it to everyone as a comedy. HBO was the only one who actually believed us. And
you're being real now.
We did. I mean, we told him it was serious. We told him it was a serious movie, but it was what we were. Yes, go ahead, Mark.
No, you can take that.
We did, and I do. I mean, it was we spent so much time laughing, and I do think it's fun. And I think the whole thing with my whole concept of why to make a movie like this that is apparently hard, challenge, difficult. It's like the anti-fantasy or something, is that I think fantasy is good for people. Personally, I think it's good for people, but I think too much of it is dangerous, because I think what fantasy ends up doing is it ends up minimizing our own lives, because there's no way we all grow up with these fantasy stories and gonna, marry the prince, marry the princess, the kind of things, and it's not how life works. And so if you grow up having this expectation of this fantasy that's constantly perpetuated in your myths, that and then you live your life and you don't achieve those things, life is such a disappointment. So in some ways, I feel like fantasy keeps us down as human beings. And so even though I know this much is true, is hard, apparently I didn't think it was that hard, but I'm trying to make movies that don't lie to people, to try to lift them up, to try to let people know that it's okay to be like this. We're all like this. We're all human. We're all flawed. We're all beautiful. We're all ugly. We're all heroes. We're all villains. You know, we're happy and we're sad, and we have dreams and we have nightmares, and all of these things come true, you know, and it's all okay, and we're going to succeed and we're going to fail, and we're going to make fools of ourselves, and we're going to make have success, you know, be like the life of the party too sometimes. And like, let's just deal with the wholeness of what it is to be a person, and not just publicize or perpetuate game show host teeth, you know, the life of the game show host teeth, which is just straight and white and no cavities and just perfect, you know. And perfection is anti-human to me. And so I want to find, so maybe with a film like this, we went extreme the other way, extreme past the other direction from perfection, to try to just hit people on on just the ultimate messiness of being of being human.
An fantasy.
Yes, an fantasy. You've been waiting this whole time.
I have.
You heard me say fantasy, you're like, oh wow.
I heard you say the anti-fantasy. I was like, the fantasy. Listen,
Right,
I've
oh,
always
no, go.
been I just always have been interested in, you know, one foot on a banana peel and the other in the grave, you know, like how that's what life is really like. It goes from absurdist, you know, divine comedy to tragedy and turns, really. In a single day, you can, you know, you could be laughing and crying, just the deepest tears of despair, and that's really when you're really alive, when you're really feeling and you're really experiencing. And so I look for projects like that. Even things that I think that are funny always have that element of tragedy in them, you know. And so for me, this is just a very cathartic thing. It was very personal. I think it was the same for Derek, and it revealed itself to be more and more personal as we shot it. I mean, like, in really surprising ways. Our lives turned towards, even our lives became this movie in the strangest ways. And sometimes you make things like that. Sometimes you get lucky to be able to tell the truth about yourself, like deep truths about yourself in your work. And it's rare, but this was one of those moments.
Beautiful. Guys, thank you so much for sharing everything. Thanks for letting me be a part of the journey of the show. I feel very fortunate, not just to be a part of the show, but to have met you guys. And thanks for sharing, you know, everything you have tonight. I know everyone watching will be super thankful and appreciative. I just wanted to give a quick shout out to the rest of the Film Roundtable team, Erin Weil, Doug Torres, and Maria Prieto, and thank everyone for listening, for your support for the platform and spending time listening to these great artists, Mark and Derek, discussing their craft and their views.
Matt, thank you.
Please follow. Yeah, what's up?
Thank you.
It was really my pleasure.
Yeah, it was great. Thank you, Matthew. That was really sweet. It was a nice way to round all this out.
Yeah, that's it, man. That's it. I'll see you at the 10-year reunion, right, Mark?
Yeah.
It's great to connect again. Great to connect. Well, let's look after yourselves, stay safe and healthy. And guys, don't forget to follow us on, you know, our channel, Roundtable, Film Roundtable, YouTube, Instagram. Listen to our podcast and check out these wonderful filmmakers and more people like them who share their wisdom and their life experiences. Guys, be safe and stay healthy.
Thank you, man. Be safe.
Yeah.
Take care.
Bye, Mark.
Bye, Dean.